desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. God, why don't you help us with this job? Because you did the job. Let me job. Okay. So today is the commemoration of the Disappearance Day of Bhaktivinode Thakura, and also Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. So, we're going to speak about these two personalities today, and first we're going to chant the prayers to the departed Vaishnavas, which are known as Saparshada Gora Viraha Vilapa. Is there bugs on there? No? Okay. And no marigolds, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Jaya Rat. No, I'm sorry. Yehanila Prema Danda Koruna Pracho Yehanila Prema Danda Koruna Pracho Hey no Prabhu Kota Gela Charyatako Hey no Prabhu Kota Gela Charyatako Kahamora Saruprupa Kahasanatan Kadaso Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamora Bhatayuga Kohoka Viraj Ekakale Kotagela Goranatara Ashane Kutivo Mata Onale Shiva Shiva. Goranga Gonera Dere Kota Gele Pabo Gonera Dere Kota Gele Pabo Se Sabasangira Sange Ye koilo vilas sangira sange ye koilo vilas se sanga na paya kande narotamodas Gianello, prima donna, corona braccio, nella prima donna, corona braccio. Jai Om Vishnupad. Paramahansa Paravidakacharya, also Teta Sitashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivinode Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Gijai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Gijai, Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Gijai, Namacharya Srila Huilas Thakur Gijai, Rem say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Gijai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopakapata Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Gitti Govardhan Kijai Vrindavanam Kijai Maturam Kijai Jagannatha Swami Kijai Yamunamai Kijai Srimati Lasi Devi Kijai Samaveda Bhakta Vrindigijai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Joy. So we will read the translation of this poem written by Narottama Das Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where's such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottama Das simply weeps. So Prabhupada instructed us to chant this song on the disappearance days of great Vaishnavas, not on the disappearance days of, or let's say Krishna leaving the planet, but great Vaishnavas. And the reason is that if we actually feel this mood of separation that Narottama Das Thakur talks about here, then we actually associate with that great Vaishnava, and then we serve the great Vaishnava, and as Bhaktivinode Thakur says, he reasons ill who says that devotees die, Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. So devotees are spiritual spiritual masters, great Vaishnavas. They're actually present with us when we remember them and serve them. So first we're going to talk about Bhaktivinode Thakur, whose disappearance day it is today. So Om Ganat Timiranda Shah Gunanjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So before I start talking about his history, some of the facts that occurred or details that occurred in his life, I want to talk about his qualities and basically what he accomplished in terms of his writing and also his daily schedule, which is very impressive. So, to glorify Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur, I'd like to read the statement of a Calcutta High Court judge. His name was Sarada Charana Mishra. He wrote, "I knew Thakur Bhaktivinode intimately as a friend and a relation, even under the pressure of official work as a magistrate in charge of a heavy subdivision. He would always find time for devotional contemplation and work. Whenever I met him, our talk would turn in a few moments to the subject of bhakti and Dvaita Vad." You understand what that means? Because generally, people were manas at that time and even now, who, manas of course means basically, philosophically, people who believe that either God is everything, or we're God, or there's just energy. And they don't understand the personality of God behind the energy, or as the source of the energy. As Krishna says in the Gita, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. So I'll continue reading. And the saintly work that lay before him. Service of God is the only thing he longed for, and service under the government, however honorable, was to him a clog. Clog means like an impediment. I was actually listening to a class of Srila Prabhupada this morning when I was doing my deity worship, and there was someone who was quoting, sorry if I offend anybody, Vivekananda, who was talking about service to man is service to God. So Prabhupada, of course, understood that service to God is service to man. And Prabhupada really chastised him. Prabhupada said, first thing Prabhupada said is, where does that say in the Bhagavad Gita? Where is that verse in any of the Vedic literatures? And then Prabhupada got into discussing Vivekananda's statement and others' statements of, like even Gandhi's statement of Daridra Narayan. You understand? Daridra Narayan. And Prabhupada said, that is an insult, because Narayan is never Daridra, means poor. They're insulting him. And then Prabhupada said, I know it has nothing to do with Bhaktivinode Thakur, but it's related to what this Supreme Court judge was saying. And then Prabhupada said, yes, everyone is poor if they're not Krishna conscious. He said the rich man is poor. And Prabhupada really blasted this guy. And then Prabhupada said, very interesting, after he blasted, Prabhupada was, of course we cannot imitate, or we should not imitate Prabhupada. After he blasted, Prabhupada said, you should study this philosophy and preach and become a guru. So here was this guy coming up with actually he was a government official, a very highly posted government official, coming up with this bogus philosophy of service to humanity. Of course, we believe in serving humanity by giving people Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada turned it around and said, you should learn Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy and become a guru. And then the man said, how can I become a guru? And then Prabhupada quoted this famous verse that everybody was born in the Bharta Bhumite Hoila Manasa Janmacha, that anyone who's born in the land of Bharta Bhumi, Bharta Barsha, then has as his duty to become a guru. And then Prabhupada said you should learn the philosophy, Yari Deka Tarika Krishna Upadesha Marigai Guru Hoi Tori Desh. It is your responsibility. So Prabhupada turned it around. Anyway, it's very interesting. So just like Bhaktivinode Thakur considered his service under the government to be a clog. Of course, what you may ask, why did he do his service to the government? Well, he dovetailed his service to the government in Krishna service. Because he was serving the government, he became very influential. He was able to support his family and his children, especially Bhaktivinode Saraswati Thakur, were great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Bhaktivinode Saraswati Thakur, of course, as you know, Srila Bhaktivinode Saraswati Thakur is the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada. So this is this is actually instructive for us that if we have to do things like work a job or whatever, we should take that as helping us in our actual service, our actual life, our first priority, which is serving Krishna. And certainly Bhaktivinode Thakur did it. So let's hear about his schedule. And I find this very inspiring since, it's one of the, I don't want to use that word bones I have to pick because that's a karmi expression, but one of my things that aggravate me the most is that people don't understand the importance of getting up early and they stay up late at night. So let's hear Bhaktivinode Thakur's schedule, how he accomplished so much for Krishna. Of course, he has a spiritual body, and he could do things that none of us could do. So anyway, so he took rest at 7:30 at night. Pretty good. But then he got up at 10 p.m., not to party, like many of us, and he lit an oil lamp. There wasn't electricity at that particular time. And then he wrote the whole night until 4 o'clock in the morning. That's how he became such a prodigious writer. And the same thing with Prabhupada. Of course, Prabhupada, he got up at about 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and Prabhupada wrote in the morning. Because that particular time in the morning is a very good time for writing, concentrating the mind, and everything like that. And other times of the day are really not so good for sadhana. What I generally find is that when people have not chanted their rounds, or at least most of them, by about 8 or 9 in the morning, then the rounds are very spaced out through the day. Then they're just concentrated on getting them done. Just like, I got 4 more rounds to do. It's just like an austerity. Oh my God, japa purgatory. I don't know if you know what Purgatory means, like when you go down there, or the hell, and you actually get punished. That's purgatory. So the morning. So anyway, and then at 4 o'clock in the morning, he did take a little rest for half an hour. Then at 4:30, he got up again, and he washed his hands and face, and he chanted japa till about 7 o'clock in the morning. Then at 7 o'clock in the morning, he wrote letters. At 7:30, very punctual. Actually, I think he was probably the first devotee to actually carry a watch. Now, in those days, they didn't have wristwatches. They were like pocket watches. You understand? There was like a chain. You've probably seen this. And then he would pull it out of his pocket. He was so punctual. You can actually tell the time by watching him. Prabhupada was very similar. That we knew when Prabhupada was going on a morning walk, he would come out at exactly the same time. And then he would come back exactly at the time for greeting the deities in the morning. It was amazing. And Prabhupada knew how much to walk back, when to get in the car, and then bingo, right? Prabhupada would come back right for greeting the deities. So anyway, so at 7:30 he would read, and then at 8:30 he would receive guests, or continue to read if there are no guests. And then from 9:30 to 9:45, he would take a little nap. Of course, nowadays you call that a power nap. Where you take a little 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then you become invigorated instead of taking like a 5-hour nap. That's not a power nap. That puts you in the mode of ignorance. So anyway, and then at 9:45, he would take his bath, take breakfast of a half quart of milk, a couple of rotis, takes some fruit too, and at 9:55, just 10 minutes of breakfast. He'd go to court in a carriage. He would wear coat and pants to court with double-sized Tulsi neck beads and tilak. You know, he wasn't afraid of hiding who he was. And now, of course, in the Western world, we have to be careful about that sometimes. This was India. He was very strong in his decisions. He would decide immediately. He would not allow any humbug in his court. He would shave his head monthly. And he was so strict that he didn't allow harmonium, and he never had any debts. I'm not saying we don't have harmonium. I mean, Prabhupada loved harmonium. But because there were so many mundane bhajan singers at that particular point. And you see that nowadays, too. I mean, we arranged for one, unfortunately, for one in New Orleans, one famous bhajan singer. I'm not going to mention his name. He came and he did his performance. It was a fundraising thing in New Orleans for our temple. And then after the performance, he and his crew went to the hotel, and we had to pay for their liquor and their meat. You know, so here they are chanting about Krishna, Krishna Govinda, and everyone's going, Krishna Govinda. And then, phew. So Bhaktivinode Thakura was very strict about that. And of course, you know, if someone's a devotee, they can use the harmonium, but don't be too much. Don't use too much flourishes. Because in the name of glorifying Krishna, we glorify ourselves sometimes. So at 10 o'clock, his court began. At 1 p.m., the court was finished. Then he'd come home and bathe and refresh, and at 2 p.m. he returned to his office. It's described that he actually did a full day's work in a half day. He was so efficient. He returned to his office just to complete whatever work he had to do. At 5 p.m., he'd translate works from Sanskrit to Bengali. Then he'd take his evening meal and bath, and it was a meal of rice, chapatis, and a little bit of milk. And as I mentioned before, he always consulted his pocket watch. In other words, it's punctual. He never accepted gifts from anyone. He declined all honors and titles offered to them by the government. He was very strict in moral principles, avoided luxurious life, would not even chew betel. Now that, you know, for us, you know, not chewing betel. But in Bengal and India at that time, chewing betel was, you know, you do it. I mean, every time I've been in India, like with the taxi cab drivers, everyone, they're buying these little packets and chewing the betel nut and the intoxication. He never went to the theaters because they were frequented by unchaste ladies. And he spoke many languages like Bengali, Sanskrit, English, Latin, Urdu, Persian, and Orient. He started writing books at 12 years of age, and he turned out many, many books. And I don't know if I'm going to read the list. I guess we should read the list just so you're impressed. So these are his original works and commentaries. I can only take out the whole class time reading the books, read a list of books, but I'll show you them because actually it would take too long to read the whole list. Here's one page of his books. Whoops, I'll show everybody there. One page. And then there's another page, partial page, of his books. Amazing, isn't it? And at the same time, he was maintaining his family, working as a judge. And what was, of course, the key was his pure devotion, but really, you know, externally, one of the keys was he used the early morning time for his bhajan and his writing, because that's the ideal time for Krishna consciousness. So, okay, a little bit of his history. some details. He was born on September 2nd, 1838 in Biranagar. And when he was born, he was born into a very rich family, but his family was generally opposed to Krishna consciousness. Generally, they were Shaivites or impersonalists. But after some time, everything was lost in his family. Actually, his father passed away, and all the family property was taken away, and then they became really poverty-stricken. So as he grew up, and he attended college in Calcutta, and even at 18, he was so adept at English and speech making that he actually trained up an orator who was famous in the British Parliament. So his first work that he composed was a English epic entitled The Poriad, which he wanted to complete in 12 books. And he was about 19 years old. And these two books describe the life of Porus, who met Alexander the Great. He never completed it. But in the beginning, he was very much taken up by Christian theology. Why was he attracted by Christian theology? Because, at least in Christian theology, they accepted the existence of a supreme person or a supreme God. Whereas what was extant, that means present, in India at that time was monism. In other words, there may be a god or gods, let's use that term. Because generally when people go in the Hindu temple, they say, the gods. And I say, oh my God. And of course, Krishna is God. We understand that. But generally people didn't believe in a supreme God. And still, to a great extent, people don't believe in a supreme God. In India, they believe in either many gods or ultimately you just use the gods, and if you come to the highest stage of spiritual realization, then you just lose your identity and merge into the existence of God or the effulgence of God or whatever. That's like Prabhupada's prayer, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari, Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. So this word Nirvashesha is very important in this regard. Sunyavadi means something different. That's voidism, like Buddhism. But Nirvashesha means that not understanding the difference in the different categories, the tattvas, for example. Tattva means like Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, Shakti Tattva, just confusing all these different tattvas. And so that's why Prabhupada's pranam mantra is so important. Prabhupada has actually come to the Western world, which was influenced by Indian Nirvashesha. All the qualities, all the different tattvas are one. Actually, before Prabhupada came, of course, there were some people from India, like Vivekananda, who came and just gave us the blessing of monism. And also, we were given the blessing in America of marijuana. These are the two main imports in the early 20th century from India. But anyway, so Bhaktivinode Thakura was completely against it. So basically, all that was taught about Hinduism at that time, and of course Hinduism is a geographical term, we understand. It has nothing to do, actually the name of India was Bharatavarsha, not Hindustan. Like there's Pakistan, Hindustan, and all these Stan people. So in the Stan countries, Afghanistan, right? So anyway, so it's Bharatavarsha is the name of India. And even the word India comes also from the same word Hindu, Indus, Indus, Sindhu, Hindu. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was so much opposed to monotheism because he was a theist by nature. And that's why he was attracted by Christianity. And he would study the works of many Christian theologians and also Christian Christian philosophers. You have Channing, Parker, Emerson, and Newman. Of course, Emerson also read the Bhagavad Gita. And then he gave lectures on this at Indian societies, and one lecture was The Evolution of Matter Through the Material Mode of Goodness, trying to bring things together for people in India. So he still wasn't externally exposed to Krishna consciousness at that particular juncture. Although he was and is a Nityasiddha devotee. But sometimes in the lives of Nityasiddha devotees, by the influence of Yoga Maya, they appear to forget their position. And this is to help us understand the importance of taking association with the devotee or reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we're going to talk about in a second. Just like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, before he actually took initiation, he was attacking the Vaishnavas, not physically, but verbally. He would challenge them using his nyaya, which means logic and reason, and they were all trying to avoid him. And they were praying to Krishna, either get rid of this Nimai Pandit or turn him into a devotee. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had similar pastimes. So anyway, in the meantime, he went to Orissa one time to visit his grandfather, and his grandfather, who could see the future, his grandfather, his name was Raja Vallabhadatta, was getting ready to leave the planet, and he actually predicted that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was going to be a great preacher, and he told Bhaktivinoda Thakur to visit all the different monasteries and temples in Orissa. And he did this Bhaktivinoda Thakur did this when he was 21 years old. So remember, all these things are happening at a very early age for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So then in 1861, he accepted the post of deputy magistrate in the government of Bengal. And when he did that, shortly after that, he received the Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam from Calcutta. And when he read that, he read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially his faith in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu increased dramatically. Of course, he already had faith. This was a pastime. And so he gave a speech. He started giving speeches about the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then some of the other stories here, these are about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Later on, he was transferred to this place called Champarana, and there people used to worship a ghost in a banyan tree. And this ghost had the power to influence the mind of a local judge to decide in favor of the worshiper. We should try that with the Supreme Court. Anyway, this ghost had power. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was known as Kedaranath, he engaged the father of a famous girl scholar named Ramabai to read Srimad Bhagavatam under the tree. And after 1 month, the tree crashed to the ground, and many people started to develop faith in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is so much faith Bhaktivinoda Thakur had in the Bhagavatam and in Krishna's holy names. Many times I hear people say, well, I chanted the holy names and the ghosts are still bothering me. Well, not true. Can't be true, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in the Harinam Chintamani that even namabhas chanting, that means chanting when it's not really deliberate chanting when you're joking with someone, chanting when you're making fun of someone, chanting when you're indicating something else, has the power to drive away all inauspicious things like ghosts. So sometimes what we think are ghosts are coming from something else. As they say, the ghost in the machine. Perhaps one of the most famous stories of Bhaktivinode Thakur's being a court judge was the story of Vishikashena. So Vishakashena was actually a yogi, and he had some yogic powers. And he declared himself to be Mahavishnu. And he had two friends. One friend was Brahma, the other friend was Shiva. So they were the guna avatars or something like that. Of course, Mahavishnu is not a guna avatar. And they would go to the different villages, and Mahavishnu would have his rasa dance with all the girls. Because he had so much power, people would actually send their wives and daughters. Can you imagine that? It's just like, what's going on, you know? And to have a rasa dance, you know, meaning more than just dancing. So, and also, he was opposed to the British government. So that was the final straw. I guess the rasa dance was all right, but the British... so everyone was... even the kings became under the sway of this particular guy. So the British government asked Bhaktivinode Thakur to get rid of him. And of course, Bhaktivinode Thakur wanted to get rid of him, not because he was a revolutionary, but because he was imitating God. And even he didn't know that Mahavishnu doesn't have a rasa dance. It's only Krishna in Vrindavan who has his rasa dance. So even he got his the Siddhanta wrong. You know, so two faults. He was declaring himself to be God, and he didn't understand the Siddhanta properly. So Bhaktivinode Thakur drew up some plans to arrest him. He went there first, and he asked this particular rascal to come with him to Orissa. And this rascal actually knew what Bhaktivinode Thakur came from, because he had these mystic powers. I mean, he could make flames come from his hair. I mean, he could do so many things. And Bhaktivinode Thakur said, you should come and see the Lord Jagannath. And then this rascal said, the Lord Jagannath is just some wood. I am the Lord. So as soon as Bhaktivinode Thakur heard that, he said, that's it. He said, why should I come here? I'll read his direct quotes. Why should I come to see Jagannath? He's only a hunk of wood. I am the supreme in person. And so there's many rascals like that who declare themselves to be God or accept worship from people who declare them to be God. So Bhaktivinode Thakur became furious and tied him up, even though everybody else was scared of him. And this person was guarded by 36 Muslim constables, because the Muslims weren't afraid of him. They weren't that superstitious. They understood he wasn't Allah. And they were more intelligent. And 72 policemen from Cuttack, day and night. It took that many people to guard him. And Brahma and Shiva did not get arrested, say they'd been forced to do it. I was forced to be Brahma, forced to be Lord Shiva. Crazy. But later on, they were persecuted. So then there was this trial. The trial lasted 18 days. Thousands of people gathered outside to protest. Just like, you have this Black Lives Matter now, so it was like Vishikashena Lives Matter. They were protesting. Can you imagine? Thousands of people. So on day 6 of the trial, Bhaktivinode Thakur's second daughter became seriously ill and nearly died. But then within a day she recovered. This was actually due to his mystic powers of the rascal. And Bhaktivinode Thakur said, when his wife tried to dissuade him from prosecuting, he said, yes, let us all die, but this rascal must be punished. Such determination. It shows his great determination. And then on the last day, Bhaktivinode Thakur became extremely ill with high fever and suffered just like his daughter had done for the whole day. But then he still dragged himself to court, pronounced the man guilty, and when he was being ready to be put in jail, the English doctor, Dr. Walter, cut off the guy's hair, and then all the power went away. So he kept his yogi power. That's why yogis, they have a lot of hair. They keep power in the hair somehow or other. So then he actually committed suicide after 3 months in the prison. So later on, Bhaktivinode Thakur studied the Srimad Bhagavatam even more, and in Jagannath Puri he established the Vaishnava Discussion Society, and there was one rascal who, his name was Raghunath Das Babaji, who criticized Bhaktivinode Thakur, and later on he contracted a deadly illness and died. Oh, actually, yeah. Oh, actually, he didn't die because he went to Bhaktivinode Thakur. Bhaktivinode Thakur gave him some medicine and forgave him, and then he remained alive. There was another rascal named Charna Das Babaji who was preaching, you should chant Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam, Japa Hari Krishna Hari Ram, which there's a whole group does that right next to our Vrindavan temple. And he actually died in great distress. And he was very popular, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had actually preached against him, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to be sent out of Jagannath Puri because people were so incensed, angry at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for preaching the truth. And other things is that Bhaktivinode Thakur regulated the deity worship in Jagannath Puri, because it was very much in the Raganuga mode. That means they were just doing whatever they wanted, whatever time they wanted, and he regulated it down to the second. He was very much into regulation. And that, in 1874, Bhaktivinode Thakur discovered that the king of Puri was taking money from the donation box. So he actually, as the court judge, he actually fined the king of Puri, so that the king of Puri was forced to give Lord Jagannath Bhoga 52 times a day. The king of Puri's treasury started to be diminished very, very quickly, so the king of Puri hired 50 pundits to conduct a yagya for killing Bhaktivinode Thakur. So for 30 days they did this sacrifice. Mrityu, 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 Mrityu. And then after 30 days, the king's eldest son died. Not Bhaktivinode Thakur. So I don't think we have much more time. We have 3 more minutes, basically, in class. So many people adopted Vaishnavism because of Bhaktivinode Thakur. He also established the Yoga Pith of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was in a Dhamshala in Navadvip, not in Godram Dweep, as many people say, but in Navadvip, in the city of Navadvip. And many people were saying that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in Navadvip. Navadvip, of course, is the city across the Ganges from our Sri Mayapur Dham. But Bhaktivinode Thakur, he did a lot of research, and then one night he looked out from the roof of the Dhamshala, and he saw this bright light that was shining from a far distance. And then he went there the next day, and he saw a mound of Tulsi trees. And he asked the residents, we're all Muslims in that particular area. And then it was, somehow or other was known it was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance place. And to verify that, Bhaktivinode Thakur brought his Siksha Guru, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who at that time was about 115, 120 years old, and he was being carried around in a basket to that place by his servant Bihari. So he brought him there, and Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj got so ecstatic he jumped out of the basket. Even though he was lame, he couldn't walk. At 120 or 115, 20, it's getting up there. So he jumped out, and he started dancing to verify that it was actually Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance place. So during the final years of Bhaktivinode Thakur's pastimes, he actually, final year or so, after he retired from his post as a magistrate, he first of all, collected to build the temple at the Yoga Pith. He went door to door collecting donations, and then he feigned illness. What do I mean feigned? I mean he made believe he was ill so nobody would bother him, so he could engage in nirjana bhajan and leave this world, concentrating on the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now it's time to greet the deities. We don't have time for anything else. So anyway, I guess tonight in my class that I give online, I'll talk about Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. We're going to have a Pushpanjali after greeting the deities for Srila Bhaktivinode Thakura. Okay. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur, Ki Jai, Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami, Ki Jai. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Tamaham Bhajami. Okay, so Pushpanjali means Pushpa.
my